the Israelis are they have the full intention to invade Rafah. And what it means basically that they are just pushing the Palestinians out of Gaza. This is simply what it means.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We start with the latest massacre, the killing of Palestinians in Gaza trying to get flour to make their bread.
Authorities in Gaza say Israeli forces have committed a massacre in Gaza City, killing at least 104 Palestinians as they waited for food aid. Gaza's health ministry says over 760 people were wounded in what Hamas called an unprecedented war crime. According to eyewitnesses, Israeli forces opened fire on the crowd that had gathered around humanitarian aid trucks. The death toll is expected to rise as hospitals in Gaza City are struggling to treat the wounded. Dr. Jadala Al-Shafai of Al-Shifa Hospital spoke to Al Jazeera shortly after the attack.
Since the early hours of the morning, the hospital has been flooded with dozens of dead bodies and hundreds of injured. The majority of the victims suffered gunshot wounds and shrapnel in the head and upper parts of their bodies. They were hit by direct artillery shelling, drone missiles and gunfire. All our operation rooms are full and all medical staff have been deployed. Above all, we ran out of medical supplies and fuel necessary to operate the hospital. We hope we will be able to provide any life-saving procedures to those victims. All victims are in critical condition. They're lying on the floor. We stand helpless amid the sharp shortage of supplies. And
if you watch corporate news, they mention the incident of 100 people being killed and 700 wounded, but they dutifully report on the ludicrous, farcical Israeli explanation that these people trampled each other and that bullets were fired only when a crowd advanced on an Israeli position. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think starving people rushed to charge a squadron of Israeli tanks. On Aaron Bushnell, I wish he hadn't done it. That was my first reaction on hearing about Aaron Bushnell's immolation. I don't want people to repeat that. He could have done other dramatic things, even drastic rule-breaking acts of protest, and then we'd have him around for many decades to receive his support, guidance, and friendship. But the deed has been done, so we have to salute Aaron Bushnell's courage and terrible sacrifice and remember him as a martyr. And we have to condemn, revile, and excoriate Netanyahu and Biden and all the gutless Israeli and American politicians who created or contributed to the genocide that drove Aaron Bushnell to that act of desperation. Of course, there were many vile responses to Bushnell's immolation. A feed on Twitter called Mossad Commentary tweeted a picture of Bushnell on fire with the comment, "Our enemies kill themselves." After a while, it was deleted and then replaced with a tweet that said, "In the DM you posted yesterday that our enemies are killing themselves and you deleted a post," referring to the soldier barbecuing himself. Do you consider the U.S. an enemy? Answer: the post was deleted because it came across that way. The U.S. is an ally and a friend. Individuals don't change it, not even a president. It's possible that Mossad Commentary isn't a real feed from the Israeli security agency of that name. I scanned some of the other tweets on the feed, and it just had the feel of typical Judeo-Nazi dreck, perhaps by someone far away from the killing. On the other hand, it does have Elon Musk's blue check of authenticity and 200,000 followers, so maybe it is the Mossad. Rest in power, Aaron Bushnell. And as we record, we received news of this protest in Portland, Oregon. Alyssa Azza reported. A moving act of solidarity as veterans burn their uniforms at a vigil for Aaron Bushnell, hosted by Veterans Against War. This was after some extremely moving speeches, including a Vietnam War veteran who was part of the SDS and did a lot of anti-war organizing, encouraging people to not imitate Aaron Bushnell, but be inspired by his courage, with an added emphasis on active duty military to act in defiance against genocide and imperialism.
Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell! He is not alone! He is not alone! Remember Aaron Bushnell! Remember Aaron Bushnell!
Now, from a forum held on the 26th of February, you'll hear from Nidal Bitari, a Palestinian from a refugee family in Syria, now in the U.S., and a worker at People Demand Change.
I don't know where to start from. Maybe there is nothing louder than what happened this morning when an Air Force officer set himself on fire next to the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Actually, my wife and my daughter were driving by when this happened. So it's like, I don't know if there is any bigger indicator about like the level of frustration, disappointment, and sadness that the world is living these days due to, what do we call it, like double standards. It does not apply anymore today, like, because apparently every single case has its own standards, and we're living now in a world where it's full of chaos about the values and of humanity and the human rights and justice. So it's very heartbreaking what's going on everywhere, and it's very heartbreaking what happened to, like, with this 25 years old officer. And like, I wish that he did not set himself on fire and died this morning. I wish that he just like left the army and spoke out for whatever he was going on in his mind, and really condolences for his family wherever they are in Texas today, and to everyone like lost dear one in this crisis. Anyway, so let's start from today, where the Israelis are intent, like they have the full intention to invade Rafah. And what it means basically that they are just pushing the Palestinians out of Gaza. This is simply what it means, because all Gazans today moved from north to the south, and there is nowhere else to go. Gaza was flattened, and there is no house is standing in the north, in the middle, or until like unless they are like it's in Rafah in the south. So basically, for the last 70 years, like, since I just want to share this map with you. You know, like, this map is the map of where UNRWA works, the regions of operations of UNRWA. They are in Syria, Lebanon, West Bank, Gaza, and Jordan. So instead of decreasing and minimizing the regions of where UNRWA works, now we are increasing it. So now we are sending Palestinians even more to Egypt, and now UNRWA is going to be operating in Egypt instead of finding a solution for the 75 years old injustice that the Palestinians have been living. Guess what? I am 45 years old today, and I am still stateless. My father is stateless. My mother is stateless. My grandfather died stateless. My other grandfather died stateless, and my two grandmothers died stateless. So, how many generations of stateless people, of Palestinians, have been generated over the last 70 years? 4 different generations. Thanks God that my daughter was born here in the U.S., so she is a U.S. citizen. Otherwise, I'm going to have like just produce another stateless Palestinians and Palestinian. So I'm just like, oh, what I'm saying now is what we are seeing today is really, there are no words to describe. The Palestinians have been crying their lungs out for the last 70 years, trying to find any solution, whatever solution. So they tried this armed struggle and then ended up with Oslo in 1993. And then the peaceful solution, and it ended up with where we are today. So I don't understand the emphasis of the international community on keeping pushing a solution that is just generating way more troubles and way more problems, and it's just generating more conflicts in the region, and it's not solving anything. It's just generating more problems and regenerating the same problems over and over again. So instead, what the international community is doing today is, like they said, we're gonna cut off UNRWA. And for people who do not know, like people know UNRWA in general as the agency that is supporting relief and aid for Palestinians. But UNRWA is way more than that. It's like UNRWA is the backbone of the economy of the Palestinian people in all these regions that you are watching or looking at the map. If you just like to very, very quickly and briefly, in Lebanon, Palestinians are not allowed to work. So the only solution for them is to have UNRWA supporting them by education and health and some like simple work here and there. In Syria, before the war, Syrians were working, but now most of the Palestinians in Syria, Palestinian refugees in Syria, they depend on UNRWA. They give them $50 to $100 every month for each family, which like it's really supporting a lot of people who their camps were destroyed by the Russian air force airships in Syria, like from Aleppo to Damascus. In Jordan is the same. In West Bank and Gaza has nothing at all. Gaza, the only economy that Gaza had before the war is whatever the Israeli government allows to enter, import, and export, and UNRWA. That's it. And then the tunnels market between Egypt, smuggling goods and selling them between Egypt and Gaza. So, and then the international community decides to support Palestinians by cutting UNRWA. This is one of the worst decisions in the history of the United States. It's one of the most dangerous, and I don't know how to describe it, but it is the worst decision in the foreign policy for the United States. It's just like, it's kind of what they decided at the end is to, the United States just decided to starve or to contribute to the starvation of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Like, and always remember, when we talk about Gaza and UNRWA, even with UNRWA and with all the aid that they are sending to Gaza today, as Stanley mentioned the other day to me, that Mariam Barghouti wrote on Twitter that the aid is expired. It's like people cannot eat it because it is expired, and access to this aid is very hard. So now it's not only made it like like it's not even impossible. It does not exist anymore, which is like really. It's just sad. It's just sad, like, to see the United States doing this to. It's really unnecessary, like there are necessary phase or decisions or things that would make sense that people would argue about, and okay, you could like be supporting or anti these decisions, but this decision, I don't understand it. What is the goal behind cutting off UNRWA? Seriously, like, other than starving the Palestinians, because like UNRWA, it does not. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you this story, and I hope that it does not take that long. In Syria, for example, the whole United Nations was complicit with the Syrian regime. The whole United Nations, like from OCHA to like my colleague and I, we wrote a whole report about how the UN is complicit in the war in Syria and in the support of the Syrian regime. And none of the countries in the United Nations even thought about finding a solution for the crisis of the United Nations in Syria. But now they go to this, like, the smallest country, the smallest place on earth, and they decide to suffocate it even more. For your information, for everyone who's listening, Gaza has very, very, very unique history in the Palestinian struggle. And I'm going to tell you what. Yeah, sure. It's perfect to close with this. Gaza, for the last 50 years, was the only Palestinian place that was fully besieged. Since like 67, like before, since 67, and before that, when it was with the Egyptian, under the Egyptian control, it was under martial law, and then to the Israeli occupation, went also through the martial law, and today it's completely besieged. So Gaza, out of all the Palestinian communities and the groups where they reside in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, West Bank, it was the only place that people have been seriously besieged or under siege for the last 50 years. And they did not have the chance to breathe. And this is where we are today. I just want to close with something, like, because I didn't talk at all about Hamas. I don't want to call them, like, to use any terminology like terrorists or whatever, but I have to say, as a Palestinian, that what Hamas did on October 7th is immoral. It does not have any morals or ethics into it, and nothing would justify killing civilians anywhere. And thank you so much for listening.
I won't show you the photo. It's one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. Euromed Human Rights Communication Officer Mohammed Shehada tweeted the photo. It had gone viral among gleeful Israelis. It's of a Palestinian man crushed to death by a tank. I'll read from Shehada's tweet. An Israeli army vehicle drove over and fully crushed this Gazan detainee, likely after he was interrogated and tortured by the IDF in Al Zaytun neighborhood in Gaza. The zip ties are still on his arm, meaning his brutal murder was deliberate and premeditated. Source: the Israeli channel that posted and celebrated the picture of the Gazan crushed by the IDF. P.S. The zip tie means he was first detained by the IDF and likely tortured. Before they crushed him, he was driven over from his legs up, meaning he may have been alive and feeling his body being crushed inch by inch. Thousands of Israelis are celebrating and rejoicing this pure savagery. A tweet from Israeli journalist and filmmaker Yuval Abraham on the 27th. A right-wing Israeli mob came to my family's home yesterday to search for me, threatening close family members who fled to another town in the middle of the night. I am still getting death threats and had to cancel my flight home. This happened after Israeli media and German politicians absurdly labeled my Berlinale Award speech, where I called for equality between Israelis and Palestinians, a ceasefire, and an end to apartheid, as anti-Semitic. I suspect that the hate of the right-wing mob towards Abraham is not only from the speech he made in Germany, but from his reportage at Plus 972 magazine. And in particular, one article from last November. It's called A Mass Assassination Factory, Israel's Calculated Bombing of Gaza. It reports on how Israel's military was making it even easier to bomb plainly civilian targets, and how it lets AI, artificial intelligence, choose targets, which it did at a rate that far exceeds what was previously possible. This AI system, as described by former intelligence officer, essentially facilitates a mass assassination factory. We'll link to Abraham's article at the top of our Palestine-Israel archive. Go to thestruggle.org to see it. Senator Merkley of Oregon in January traveled to Rafah in Gaza to observe food truck delivery. A lot of people don't believe journalists, but hear this from a U.S. senator.
Israel has set up a very complicated system to inspect the trucks before them. They had such an inspection system before October 7th, and they were able to inspect and allow 500 trucks a day to enter. But they've set up a convoluted system now that Senator Van Hollen and I witnessed at Rafah crossing, where truck drivers, after loading up their supplies, often wait up to a week to get permission to pass into Gaza. A week.
If you could explain what exactly the situation is on the crossing, along the crossing, and why so many trucks are being turned away. There are lines and lines of them on the Egyptian side of the border. And when you were there, you said that in a warehouse in Rafah, filled with material, you saw this warehouse that had been rejected in inspection. The warehouse included things like oxygen cylinders, gas-powered generators, tents, and medical kits used in delivering babies. What explanation's been given for why these things are being turned away?
Well, Israel has had great reluctance about providing aid into Gaza, and yet they control all the entry points into Gaza, so they are the critical factor. And so they set up a system that's full of challenges. So truck drivers have to wait for permission to go to the inspection location, which is in Israel. So they drive then they may be waiting quite a while in Egypt, waiting for permission to do that, get to that inspection point, and they may be told, well, there is an item on your truck that we can't allow. For example, one issue we heard about was scalpels in birthing kits. Well, they have a sharp edge, so this is being rejected. Or perhaps it's an oxygen tank for a hospital, but that metal could be used as a missile launcher. Or this is a power generator needed also for a hospital, but it could be used by Hamas to put air into a tunnel. So these things get rejected, even after they have often been cleared in advance. And if a single item is rejected off the truck, the entire truck is rejected. And so this is why the process is so complicated and difficult. Partly it's rooted in an authentic desire to avoid dual-use items that will help Hamas, and partly it's rooted in a reluctance to provide aid directly from Israel into Gaza. And yet the U.S. has depended upon that as a way to provide humanitarian aid, and it's been so grossly inadequate. So every single day, we see the growing collapse of the medical system. We see women who are having C-sections without anesthesia. We see children having their limbs amputated without anesthesia. We see basic supplies of medicine for people who are suffering from high blood pressure, or they're suffering from diabetic circumstances, or they have infections and they don't have antibiotics. This is unacceptable. It's why I've been calling for the U.S. to bypass Israel and do direct deliveries of aid. We have the ability to get airlift of every medicine needed to those remaining few hospitals that are functioning. We have the ability to get aid onshore with our huge sea lift and airlift capability, and then have it distributed by humanitarian organizations. We are complicit now in this starvation and humanitarian catastrophe because of our close relationship, and this has to end. We have to act directly.
That's our program for today. Go out and protest, but stay human. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.